finest analog horror. Old school, rough around the edges, and by every account, disturbing. What if I told you there was a series out there that's recently stood out to me as one of the creepiest that I've ever covered on this channel? What if I told you that it's nearly neck and neck in quality with the revered Local 58 that we know all too well? And what if I told you that tonight we're going to be pressing through that very series while dissecting its secrets and piecing together its grim lore? Well, as you can tell by the title and length of this video, that's because we are. Enter the Walten Files, a show birthed on April 26th of 2020 by an online creator named Martin Walls. Inspired by the hit indie classic Five Nights at Freddy's, combined with a clear love for analog horror storytelling, Walls has crafted an insanely engrossing narrative surrounding 4 animatronics that were assembled for a burger restaurant named Bond's Burgers. The place opened in 1974 and was known to host birthday parties, school events, and even animatronic concerts for the public. Was known to host these things because, due to a few specific incidents, Bond's Burgers is no longer open for business. You see, the Walten Files is structured through just 3 videos at the time of writing that each contain numerous tapes, jumping back and forth between the date Bond's Burgers first opened in 1974 and 8 years later in 1982. A mysterious person named Anthony seems to reside in each video's description, and claims that these tapes were all made by an extinct company named Bunny Smiles. Now, Bunny Smiles is somewhat at the foundation here, the Fazbear entertainment of this entire ordeal, and the root of nearly every event that takes place. Deception, curiosity, loss, trauma, and regret have all found their home as cornerstones of this series, and ultimately leave us questioning what exactly is happening with the Bond's Burgers restaurant and who had started this chain of events that ended up going so terribly wrong. As you can tell by the length of this video, this series is gargantuan, with a disturbingly convoluted story that reflects that. It's something that's fascinated me for quite some time, so I'm incredibly eager to press through this side by side with all of you. So, without further ado, let's dig in. From the top, the Walten Files.
This is a compilation of tapes created by the already extinct Bunny Smiles company. I tried to get as much info as I could about what these tapes are, but all I could find was that they were handed to new employees back in 1974 to 1979, and the rest of them seemed to be recorded by a new facility caretaker in the year 1982. Hopefully I can find more soon. Anthony.
Company Introductory Tape, Archive 1, 1974. Serving as the pilot episode for the Walten Files, the first archive within this company introductory tape understandably takes a more direct initial approach at introducing you to the main cast.
And yeah, that's all it is. Just an ordinary employee training video.
Hi, and welcome to the introductory tape to your new job at Bunny Smiles Incorporated. You have applied to a job in technical support and maintenance. What does this job particularly mean? It means that you, amongst other employees, are the one who will take care of creating a magical and fun experience for Bond's Burgers.
As we've established, this first employee training video seems to have been created sometime in 1974. We're applying for a job in technical support and maintenance, and so far, it seems legit. After this brief introduction, The video goes forth to introduce us to the Bond's Burger's main animatronic characters that make up a group called the Showstoppers, consisting of the eponymous Bond the Rabbit, Shah the Lamb, Buzu the Ringleader, and Bani the Other Rabbit. The four lovingly perform a couple songs for us before we get into the nitty-gritty about what our new job actually entails.
Animated band made by BSI to entertain children. As a technician, you'll be given the role of a facility caretaker. Around this fun and magical journey we'll work on certain tasks, such as cleaning protocols,
Robot maintenance and repair.
and learning how to use BSI technology. But first, here's a message from Jack Walton and Felix Kranken, our beloved founder.
Which reads, in BSI, the most important thing to us isn't the money or the rating. The most important thing to us is that you have a wonderful experience while working with us.
That being said, with the Bond's Burgers restaurant getting opened in a few weeks, we're looking forward to achieving this dream with you.
Alright, hold up. 1975, closed for good Bond's Burgers restaurant. This video seems to have cut to an information catalog from a year later, giving us some insight into the fate of Bond's Burgers. Before we get to what's new though, I wanted to back up and highlight something that stood out to me. That photo of the founders seems oddly uncanny. I can't quite put my finger on it, but with Jack Walton especially, something definitely seems off. Anyway, that catalog houses a ton of information and context, and appears to read the following. Save, Restore, Secure. The BSI storage facility, also known as K9, is a company project to storage all valuable items from the closed-for-good Bond's Burgers restaurant. Given the situations about the incidents inside the 1974 Bond's Burgers location, any type of props, animatronics, and arcade machines will be carefully moved, inspected, and secured inside a bunker located deep down in the St. Juanes forest for good. A facility caretaker will take care of securing the facility and keeping it safe and working properly. Considering the fact that the initial role of the facility caretaker was to keep the restaurant clean, maintain the animatronics, and to learn BSI technology, I find it strange that they're now in charge of securing this top secret facility in order to keep it safe. Honestly, seems like a pretty damn big job, and it leaves me questioning what they're keeping it safe from. If that's what they're doing, that is. Archive 2, 1979. Here, we're presented with the children's cartoon created by a Sarah Evelyn. It's titled Bond's Super Sleepover and appears to convey a night where little Bond the Rabbit had invited each animatronic's younger counterpart over for a night of movies and fun. Initially, everything seems fine. However, when the narrator begins running through the guest list, we're promptly informed that this cartoon is not what it seems.
For this sleepover, he invited Shah, Buzu, and Billy. Let's check again in case we don't forget any guests. Bond invited Shah, Bozu, and...
Hey, Jack, is that you? How are you, buddy? Good to see you. I didn't see you there, buddy. So this definitely didn't help the initial uncanniness of the original Jack Walton photo. Clearly he or someone he knows has inserted his face into these tapes, leaving us to wonder why this was done. After this, we get back to the main story, which involves little Bond eagerly preparing the movie for everyone to watch. Weirdly, the VHS has that same creepy Jack face on it, and when it actually starts to play, the TV merely shows the text, "Let me out of here." Interestingly, if we take a look around the TV set, we can notice something suspect. A pill bottle with the name Sophie Walton written on it. This will be important later, so let's keep this in mind. Later on, everyone heads to bed. We're able to observe each character snoozing away. However, little Bond seems to be awoken by something, making noise in the middle of the night. Alright, so it seems that little Bond glitches into a cartoon depiction of Sophie Walten, the girl whose pills we saw earlier by the TV. As we could see, when she lit the lighter, Bond appeared behind her, looking as if he had a massive hole in his chest. Furthermore, we can observe that Sophie's dressed up in some sort of work uniform with a name tag that seems to resemble the one we saw earlier. This hints at the potential of Sophie being an employee of either Bond's Burgers or Bunny Smiles Inc. Considering the fact that she seems to be Jack Walton's daughter, then it would make sense. Another thing I'd like to highlight was that missing poster, which confirms two things. One, that the image from earlier during the guest list indeed was Jack Walton's distorted face. And two, that something happened to him, leading someone to litter his photo throughout these tapes. Also, while the missing poster date is illegible, the captions confirm that the date reads June 11th, 1974, meaning that his disappearance occurred during the same year that the Bond's Burgers restaurant opened. Could this have been the incident that caused its closure? Considering that he was one of the two founders, it honestly wouldn't surprise me. Archive 3. Taking place just after midnight on October 10th, we're heading down a forest trail. It's hard to make out on the video itself, but the person filming this can be heard in the background saying the following.
So, this is the brand new caretaker for the old Bunny Smiles facility. I'm recording this because the company requires some type of archives for the work history, something like that. I honestly have no clue because I just started working here. I'm going there right now, but they gave me this weird location that's somewhere in this forest to work at. And I've been driving for 20 minutes and I can't find the place.
About a minute and a few video cuts later, they eventually make their way to that canine bunker. I'm not entirely sure why they have him working during the ass crack of night, but hey, let's hope they're making some overtime. Anyway, upon their arrival, they venture inside and observe the following.
Chris told me this place hasn't been working since about 78, 79, somewhere around then, and that was 4 years ago, I think. So chances are it's going to smell horrendous. So, I found this, and I think this is a good thing for relocating products for the company. Although the dollar thing you got now, and those guys are asking their days. But, unfortunately, diagnostic control is right there. Yeah, her left arm. The left arm.
What was that thing?
I can't feel anything. He thought I was her. Brian's paralyzed. He isn't dead. Yet. He thought I was her though. Is he referring to Sophie? Considering that she seemed to be dressed up in a work uniform that resembled Brian's, it would make sense, but that then leaves us wondering why. Why would Bond seemingly awaken and react so violently, mistaking another employee for what we can assume to be Sophie Walten? Why was he programmed to do this? Backing up to the beginning of that scene, we can overhear Brian talking about how the facility wasn't open for 3 or 4 years. For that entire length of time, the bunker was derelict and abandoned, banished to Mother Nature and forgotten. Interestingly, once he made it inside, we can recall that he made a passing reference to something called a relocate project that he claimed Bond would be good for. It seems that after this long hiatus, someone at Bunny Smiles made the call to open K9 back up, which I find a bit strange considering that the information catalog had claimed that it would be closed for good. For what reason they're reopening it though? I couldn't tell you at this point. But what I do know is considering the fact that Bond had chased Brian out of the facility, eventually catching up to him, mangling his entire body, and leaving him for dead. This so-called relocate project just might be the worst idea that Bunny Smiles has ever had. At least, as far as I know.
This is another compilation of tapes from Bunny Smiles Incorporated. I was able to contact people via forums and threads that have some information on the company. These tapes revolve around some relocation project that was being executed during the late 1970s. A BSI ex-employee mentioned that the tapes were really private and only a few people had copies of them. Once the company vanished in the early 80s, all tapes regarding the project were banned and destroyed. These are super rare, and I'm really lucky to have them.
The Relocate Project. Archive 1. July 2nd, 1978. The footage opens up with an informational segment about the closure of Bond's Burgers and the purpose of the Relocate Project. The same narrator that voiced the company introductory tape is back, and seems to be eager about the future of Bunny Smiles Incorporated. Oddly though, if we look closely during this segment, we can notice bits and pieces of visuals that don't quite fit in. Have a look.
Hello, BSI members and employees, and welcome to the tape that will change the future of the Bond's Burgers brand and the Bunny Smiles company for the better.
That's right, after 4 long years of legal paperwork, we finally decided to use our backup plan, which we created after the tragic closure of Bond's Burgers back on July 20th, 1974. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present to you the Relocate Project. But before we go into details, we want to greet all the new Bunny Smiles employees.
With the company greeting out of the way,
Let's start analyzing the Relocate Project by checking what has happened ever since the closure of Bonds 4 years ago. As many of you might have known from previous tapes, our beloved entertainers were safely secured in St. Juana's storage facility some months after the restaurant's closure. Later on, a good amount of business opportunities appeared, such as books, merch, animated movies. We even got a TV show. That's when Felix Kranken had the brilliant idea of restore and reprogram the robots of Bond's Burgers with the purpose of relocating them in a new restaurant that would be opened in a not-so-distant future. A pretty smart plan, right? Making enough money to eventually reopen the Bond's Burgers restaurant is no doubt a brilliant idea. So let's give it up for Felix Kranken, a man with not only a giant brain, but also a giant heart.
So clearly Jack Walton sunk his little tendrils into this tape as well, interrupting what seems like a self-aggrandizing segment about Felix Kranken. Admittedly, this does appear to be symbolic, especially when we consider the fact that, earlier, Felix was labeled as the founder, singular, with Jack cropped out of the original photo that the pair had taken together. To me, this notion combined with the aforementioned 4 years of legal paperwork makes it seem like there might have been some bad blood between the two after this so-called incident that occurred back in 1974. Further supporting this is the fact that when the Bond's Burgers merchandise is being shown, we can spot a VHS about the disappearance of Jack Walton hidden behind the others. And if we head back even further to the file section, we can spot something a bit odd. You see it? It's cut off and hardly legible, but the words on the file box appear to read, "Jack's still here." Seems a bit deliberate, doesn't it? Given that these were so-called internal company tapes, that means that someone within Bunny Smiles knew something they probably shouldn't have when they were putting this footage together. So what actually happened to Jack? Considering the fact that the Relocate project appears to have been in planning since sometime in 1975, merely a year after his longtime friend and business co-founder went missing, to me, Felix Kranken is beginning to seem more and more suspicious as time goes on. Jumping forward a month, we're greeted with what appears to be an internal company tape regarding animatronic reprogramming. Banny appears on screen, and for this example, is used for these tests. The video initially shows their mouth opening and closing, with captions claiming that this is a so-called pre-relocate feature that requires checking since reprogramming could have affected this. Afterwards, they move on to a new Relocate project exclusive, which involves blinking. Ominously, the captions claim that employees would always need to keep their eye sockets clean, which I find odd considering that they're mechanical. With what we know so far about Bond and what he did to Brian Stells, I do wonder if Banny's alive per se, in the same way. Anyway, after this brief test sequence, a distorted face becomes overlaid onto Banny's head, implying that they're either representative of a human counterpart, or that someone's locked within her somehow. Once this brief section passes, the video cuts to a top-down view of what appears to be the inside of Bond's Burgers, showing Banny helplessly trying to escape.
The mighty rabbit needs to get out. 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 The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving.
The bunny rabbit needs to get out. The bunny rabbit is starving. Starving for what? At the end of that entire sequence, we were greeted with a shrouded missing persons poster. After brightening it, it doesn't appear to be Jack's, but that of a Susan Woodings. The missing date's hard to make out, but it appears to be on the 30th of June in 1974. So, 2 missing posters and 2 animatronics that appear to be alive. And so we make our way to the new, updated, and revised technical support tape made specifically for the canine facility. Shaw the Lamb is our host in this one, and states that she'll be taking us through an orientation and area tour inside the bunker.
Welcome to Technical Support. Today we will focus on the area tour and orientation inside K9, the Bunny Smiles storage facility. We recommend all facility caretakers to have all needed equipment in hand and to always wear the Bunny Smiles uniform. But most importantly, all of you must always, under any circumstance, use your BSI ID card. Once you have all the necessary equipment at hand, we are ready to go.
Barring how uncanny Shaw's mouth movements are, this small section confirmed that the costume that Sophie was wearing back in the introductory tape was indeed a facility caretaker uniform. Let's keep that in mind. The next segment takes us outside of K9. We make a quick check for all the necessary equipment for the job. A lantern, snacks, a key, and a camera before we make our way inside. Once we do, Shaw begins to annoy us because,
wow, it's pretty dark here. You should turn on the light. Turn on the light. Turn on the light. Turn on the... It's important to keep track of which rooms you enter. This place can be really tricky and you could get lost very easily. This is the resting room. In this room, you can sit down, rest, talk with coworkers, you name it. Remember to always keep this room as clean and organized as possible. A clean environment helps to get tasks done faster. A dirty environment only makes your job harder to get done. Alright, this is the main hall of the place. In front of you, you will find 3 doors. These are storage areas. The first door is used to save any kind of cleaning items and supplies. The second door is used to save a kind of prizes and merch that was available in a Bond's Burgers restaurant. The third door is used to hide...
The third door is used to hide what, Shaw? The bodies? Yeah, anyway, so that silhouette, you saw that too? At this point, we have no context or clues about who that could be, but let's keep them in mind.
Welcome to the basement.
No, hold on a second, run that back. Backwards.
Rosemary would go to the restaurant every night hoping that his beloved husband would reappear after being missing for weeks, but no response until one day she heard a voice saying, "I know where she is, Rosie," coming from the backstage.
Interesting. Given the context, it's a no-brainer to assume that Rosemary is Jack's wife. The ending to that quote, though, implies that something lured her backstage. But what?
Welcome to the basement. Right now, you are in the main storage area. As you can see, this is the room where we storage more important items such as stages, tables, arcade machines, and birthday props. Now, please follow me to the next door.
In the Bond's Burgers restaurant. Remember to avoid touching or shining lights at our robots unless you are a facility technician. Now let's move on to the next room.
How odd. I remember we visited this room already.
Sophie, where am I?
Listen.
By the time the lady entered the backstage as the voice told her to, missing husband wasn't there. Instead, she found a rabbit.
Rose broken will fix you. You will beautiful. You will beautiful. You will beautiful.
When she woke up, she looked beautiful. But on the inside,
Every single part of her body was bleeding out.
Alright, so what just happened there? Right after Shaw finished showing us the basement, we briefly see a photo of Bond and Shaw together, almost like they're a couple. Shaw appears to enter the backstage area, notifying us that only facility caretakers should be shining lights on the robots before leaving that room, only to make her way back to the basement. Afterward, she expresses confusion, claiming that we visited this room already, utters the words, "Sophie, where am I?" and then walks southbound once more into what appears to be that silhouette figure from earlier. We then see a cartoon version of what we can assume to be Rosemary, with a strange voice giving more context into that reversed audio from earlier. Instead of finding her husband, they claim, she found a rabbit. Bond, the rabbit. After claiming over and over that, "You will beautiful," and "You're broken, we'll fix you," Bond appears to dismember Rosemary before stuffing her corpse into Shaw's body. Shaw wakes up and expresses that she looked beautiful before we see yet another shrouded missing persons flyer. After brightening this one up, we can clearly see that it's for Rosemary Walten. July 19th, 1974. I'm beginning to see a pattern. Here, we have a poster for Rosemary, who we know was killed and stuffed into Shaw. Earlier, we witnessed one for a Susan Woodings, who appeared to possess Banny, and at the very beginning of the first episode, we saw one for Jack Walten. Considering that he's been missing this entire time, the fact that Bond was one of the first alive animatronics that we witnessed in this series, and the implications that came with that photo of Shaw and Bond, I'm starting to get the impression that the Jack Walten corpse is, in actuality, stuffed inside of Bond the Rabbit. This is, of course, just a theory, but it leads me to wonder, if it's true, who exactly did that? Let's move on.
Oh no, but the place itself was open during a short period of time, in which a certain number of cases occurred around the area. Huh, yeah. And there were complaints from...
So this fourth tape involves the experience that 3 facility technicians had during a 3-day stay at K9. For the first part of this tape, we can overhear them gossiping in the background while they're getting their work done. According to them, they're on a 3-day timeline to get these animatronics reprogrammed for the Relocate project and are hastily working to complete it before then. During their conversation, they discussed the fact that they overheard cases that occurred back at Bond's Burgers. Allegedly, the place played music from midnight to 2 to 3 in the morning and closed down after people reported screams from an adult woman inside. They go forth to explain that the place had to close down so the police could check it out, and on the very last day that the restaurant was open, they had only let 2 families in. That day, the animatronics were missing, and all the curtains were closed. The next scene takes place 2 days later. Going by their conversation, they weren't able to get the robots pre-programmed due to what they described as highly damaged endoskeletons, and as a result, they declared their efforts a failure before getting ready for their last night of rest in this facility. But Ashley wasn't quite ready to pack it up. She begins inquiring on the small key that they were told to bring with their other supplies and how it doesn't seem to have a purpose. Everyone else discounts her curiosity, and they all head to bed. Well, except Ashley. She grabs the camera and sets out to explore, finding her way to a door labeled back doors. After realizing that her key fits the lock, she heads back there to ease her curiosity.
This is bigger than I thought. I don't think I have enough time, so I'll just try and peek around doors and see what's inside. There are a ton of empty rooms with boring stuff. I came across this door, which was open. Kinda weird. Anyway, this room seems to have some spare endo pieces, and from the looks of it, some unused animatronics, I guess? I won't go into detail about what I find, since I'm in a rush, of course, and this room number 26 or 27, I think. As you can see here, there are some spare heads. Nothing I'm interested in, to be honest. This is the last door. I've never seen this clown thing before. It's really, like, there's absolutely no way I'm getting close to that thing. I'll probably wait till you guys see this video and come down here with me so we can take a close. I found this. I'm pretty sure that clown thing had a cassette player installed. So I guess I'll have to be brave and try and see what this whole thing is. I don't really know why this dude has a cassette player thing installed. But my guess is that it's used for birthday parties, like, you know, play a customized tape or something? I don't know. But we're about to find out.
Susan, Charles, Rosemary, Sophie. Hello, I'm Billy, the funny movie clown.
Alright, let's unpack this. Ashley ventures off into the back doors area of the facility, something that, given the context, doesn't get explained to new facility caretakers that take on the role. This entire scene is the epitome of curiosity kills the cat, since when she went snooping, she encountered Billy the Clown, who went forth to become her new eternal jail cell. What I find strange is that the tape she found had the word discard written on it, with Jack's disappearance date above it. Why would this tape need to be discarded? Could it potentially be activating the animatronics, making them kill people? Speaking of killing, the names that were read off from the tape are definitely cause for concern. Jack, Susan, Charles, Rosemary, and Sophie. Now, we know that Jack, Susan, and Rosemary had all gone missing, and we have a suspicion that their corpses have all been stuffed into these animatronics to make them beautiful. Considering that Jack, Rosemary, and Sophie are all part of the Walten family, this leads me to wonder who Charles and Susan are. What's their relation to Bunny Smiles, and why are they included in this ominous list of names? Moving forward, right before the video ends, we get 2 quick bits of text. Pausing on the latter text gives us a code, which we'll come back to in a second, and pausing on the former reads the following. They left the next day. They thought Ashley left early, but she was in the back doors, screaming as much as she could, but no one heard the screams. The following days, the caretakers would complain about an awful smell coming from the back doors. Company decided to shut down the facility until new advice. The relocate project was unsuccessful. Ashley is still there, but she's not screaming anymore. She saw something she wasn't supposed to see, and now she's beautiful. Admittedly, this really drives home just how large the canine facility is. Ashley was left there, screaming for help, while Bond presumably injured her so badly that she couldn't fight back. And nobody heard her. Nobody noticed she was gone. At least, until the smell of her rotting corpse within Billy filled the air days later. And so it appears that we now have 4 victims. Jack, Susan, Rosemary, and now Ashley. 4 victims, 4 animatronics, and a whole bunch of talk about becoming beautiful. Now back to that code. You know what it is. A YouTube link. So let's head there. The story of Bond's Burgers goes back to 1958, where 2 college students had the same idea of animated performers. Their names were Jack Walten and Felix Kranken. It took them 16 years to actually execute this concept, and by that time, Kranken and Walten had built their own families. Felix married a beautiful lady, and Walten was not only a great husband, but also the happy father of 3 beautiful children. Lucky You is a bit easier to follow than the others. It's 1 tape with 1 archive. The video opens by showing us various dates and highlights from Bond's Burger's short tenure. The opening day is shown to be on the 28th of June, with the first birthday party hosted just 2 days later. Interestingly, this is the same day of the month that Susan Woodings went missing. Anyway, the video then shows us the dates of the final Bond's Burger shows, followed by the actual duration that the restaurant was open. It was only 22 days, not even 1 month before it was shut down. Also, it seemed to open 17 days after Jack Walten went missing. A bit strange to open after your co-founder goes missing, isn't it? Moving forward, we can then see that the restaurant was boarded up and abandoned by Halloween, and by January, the canine facility was in full force. I don't know about you, but the construction of a top-secret bunker in the middle of the woods seems like it would take longer than 6 months at maximum. Seems a bit like this move was pre-planned. But hey, for all I know, Bunny Smiles could have had this facility in place already for other purposes. About midway into the video, we can observe it cut to the day that Jack went missing. A voice greets us and states the following.
You must be so confused about what you saw. Don't be scared, my little bunny. Answers will be given eventually, but don't try to solve this puzzle only with the pieces you have so far. This is only the beginning. For I'm going to tell you a story of broken people, beautiful people. He is so sorry about what he did to them, but there's nothing he can do. Remember that. Safety and pills, Sophie. Safety and pills, Sophie. Safety and pills, Sophie.
Safety and pills, Sophie. Strangely, this voice keeps repeating that exact phrase while the video cuts to prior death scenes. On top of this, if we fast forward to the very end, we can observe a message to Sophie herself. They will see you soon. Given all these direct messages to her, it's beginning to seem like this tape might have been made for her. Considering that she was Jack's daughter and is confirmed to have worked for BSI at some point in her life, maybe she witnessed something she shouldn't have, like Bond gruesomely murdering someone. Because of this, we can assume that she may have obtained a prescription somehow to make her feel safe. Whether that safety is to help her cope or to forget it entirely is to be seen. But perhaps we'll get some more context later on. I just wonder why they're so prevalent.
Hey, long time no see. The following footage is about a 1980s video game created by the company. The reason it took me so long to get this footage was because the game never really released to the public, and all footage available was from the beta version. During October of 1982, a few Test Bunny farm machines were distributed around Brighton, Michigan, and this footage was from the arcade machine sent to the Enfant Hotel. The two girls playing the game seemed to have lived there, but the weird thing about these machines was that all the footage from the game was recorded and then revised by BSI technicians to see if the game was ready to be published. This was one of them, and quite possibly the only footage remaining of the game. The footage itself was extremely corrupted, however, and it took me weeks to be able to piece everything together with the help of a friend of mine. But I'm glad you've all been patient for this. It seems to be a huge one anyways.
Bunny Farm. Being one of the more streamlined episodes in the series, you'd be surprised to know that it's also the longest. By far. The video opens up with the company introductory tape intro sequence, followed by numerous cuts to various points within the Walten Files series. Strangely, we can see a sad girl overlaid onto this footage, and if we look closely, we can also spot a brief news sequence from a Local 57 about an incident that occurred in the St. Juanas forest. The same forest in which Brian Stells was left for dead by Bond. After this, we're notified that the photo of this girl is Sophie, before we see that of another named Jenny Letterson and the date this footage was taken. Interestingly, this was merely 5 days after the Brian Stells incident, making it the most recent footage in the series thus far. The game launches. Ginny explains to Sophie that the machine that they're playing on was recently installed in the basement of the building they're living in, the Enfant Hotel, and that it was just one of a few units that Bunny Smiles created for testing. Curiously, if we head back to the title screen, we can see that development on this game started in 1975, a year after Bond's Burgers had shut its doors. The exact reason why they closed is still mostly unclear, but I find it interesting that they proceeded with development nonetheless. Anyway, the two joke around a bit before Sophie makes a file and begins the game. Before she can actually play though, we can see a brief intro sequence that sets the premise for the Bunny Farm storyline. Apparently, a fruit festival is occurring, however none of the characters have any fruits around. Luckily though, a Pete the Hippo has a barn full of any fruits you need and will grant you access to it if you help out around the farm. Seems simple enough, eh? Let's see how it played out.
Pete the Hippo. You know, something I like about the game is the artwork. I don't know why, but there's something about it that seems, really familiar to me.
Huh. Right, I should show you the controls so you don't have a hard time playing later on.
Alright.
Okay, so you use this thing to move around.
Okay.
And you use these buttons to interact with stuff.
Yeah.
Apples.
Yeah, I played this game for a while a few days ago, and
So here, Ginny explains to Sophie that the game's super unfinished, hammering home its potential for glitches and bugs. Strangely though, Sophie seems to be unaware of anything she's doing or who the characters even are in this game, which I find incredibly suspect considering that she worked for BSI in some capacity and is one of the founder's daughters. You would think that if her father were to go missing after having pretty substantial involvement with Bond's Burgers, that she'd at least acknowledge their existence. It's like she doesn't even know them, like she's forgotten everything and shut it out completely. I just wonder if something might have helped with that. Interestingly, a few moments later, Sophie puts these suspicions to bed, making passing references to the pills that we've seen throughout the previous tapes.
Yeah. Thing is, the pills have been making me forget a lot of stuff from my teenage years and my childhood, and like, I started taking them for a reason, but I really don't want to think about it.
So her memory's confirmed to be suppressed, but that opens an entirely new door of questions. Like, remember that phrase Shaw spit out in the Relocate Project tape? Remember how out of place it was?
Sophie, where am I? Listen.
Something lured her backstage. But what if it wasn't Bond, but Sophie? If we think back to the company introductory tape, we can recall that one brief segment where little Bond lit the lighter and glitched into Sophie in a work uniform. What if this is what greeted Rosemary when she went backstage, meaning that Sophie had a direct hand in her death? If this is true, then that leaves us wondering if she did this willingly or was coerced into doing so. Just a few thoughts, but perhaps we'll gather some more answers later on. The two then discuss a bit more about the company and the events that recently happened involving them. Ginny explains that a person named Brian had recently gone missing and how the case is similar to that of this other girl named Ashley who met the same fate.
I know you're into that
BSI?
kind of Bunny Smiles Incorporated.
Have I heard that name before?
I mean, that company has been pretty relevant these past few weeks. Didn't you hear?
What happened?
Some weird rumors and shit. Apparently there was this one employee that drove to some forest a few days ago. Not too far away from here, actually. He hasn't been seen around ever since he drove to that place.
Really?
Yeah. The word got out quickly. Some family members say it was his first day.
Well, what's his name?
Brian, I think?
Well, I hope he's doing alright.
Clearly word's gotten around about these mysterious disappearances, and I find it strange that Sophie discounts it so heavily. I don't know, if I were to be playing a game that were tied to so many peculiar incidents, I'd be a bit apprehensive. But that's just me. After this, Ginny then claims that she needs to head out to finish a paper, leaving Sophie alone in the basement to play the game herself.
Alright, first we need to get the party hats. They should be in the Alright, good track. Now we need...
On this. Is that clear even there?
Alright, how do I...
And so Sophie presses on, occasionally expressing confusion and apprehension at the glitches that appear on screen. It weirds her out, but it doesn't stop her. Anyway, she eventually makes her way to the end of Billy the Clown's level and plays a game of tic-tac-toe. After beating him at it, Jack's face appears before the game begins to glitch out, showing Ashley's mutilated face within the Billy character.
Jenny? What the hell? Hold on, I need to restart the level. Christ. Never mind.
Sophie hangs it up for the night. She's seen enough. One night later. Sophie decides to play again, however realizes that her save file has been corrupted by a third party. This screen proceeds to warn us that if we continue, then the machine could suffer major changes and even a complete shutdown. A bit tense, she agrees and begins to play again. Her mood is almost a complete 180 from the previous night, and the game reflects that. Sophie goes forth to interact with the signpost that previously mentioned Pete the Hippo running the farm. However, this time, for a fraction of a second, we're able to read that it's been altered. He promised to take care of the 2 kids during that day. He told the parents everything was okay. It's sad that we can't really remember you, Sophie, but soon we'll be together, forever and ever. Rest in peace. The 2 lovely red children. May 11th, 1962 to May 2nd, 1974. August 22nd, 1965 to May 2nd, 1974. It doesn't appear that Sophie actually read it because she carries on as usual, but let's keep this weird message in mind. A few moments later, she begins Banny's game called Hippo House. The premise of this one involves rallying up the pigs that Banny mistakenly let out.
Wouldn't it be funny if I opened the cage? I think it would be really funny. I think it would be really, really funny. Yeah, I think I'm gonna open the cage now. Yeah.
Oh no, Banny! What have you done? All the pigs have escaped to the Hippo House.
Banny, you dumb bunny.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to help.
And so we carry on to solve this problem. Thanks, Banny. You bunny. So Sophie continues, making passing references to the glitches she's been encountering thus far. She mentions how it seems like the faces she's seeing in the game are trying to talk to her somehow, before the game cuts out, playing the following recording from Susan Woodings.
BSI Technical Support Audio Log Number 3, June 30th, 1974. Jeremy's birthday party finished an hour ago. I decided to stay and help the employees clean the place. This week has been strange, especially because of the opening. I find it weird that they opened the place even though Mr. Walten disappeared a few weeks ago. I hope he's doing alright. Rosemary came in today and asked if we'd seen him around. I'm pretty worried about it. Felix seems very concerned and worried too. Anyway, the birthday party, yes. Everything went according to plan. This was the first birthday party in the restaurant, and I feel it turned out pretty well. I noticed a few irregularities in the stage and in the audio animatronics. As the engineer and the person who basically built the animatronics to begin with, it was easier to notice these, especially in Bond. Something fell off. The limbs weren't moving properly. They looked stiff and odd, mainly in his right arm. It took a few more minutes to take him to the backstage, just to make sure everything's okay. I'm the only one left. Chris left some hours ago, and Felix didn't even show up. I'll leave and close the restaurant when I'm finished. I'm sure it's not going to take long.
Given what we just watched, we're able to establish the connection between Susan Woodings and the BSI animatronics. She built them and noticed irregularities in Bond. It seems that, as a result, soon after this was recorded, she set out to repair him, however was mangled and paralyzed in the process. I am still alive, but I can't move, and I'm having trouble breathing, and my stomach feels weird. This drives home the point that Susan Woodings was placed inside a Banny, but that leaves us wondering if it were due to Bond always having irregularities or if someone tampered with them. Considering that this was filmed on the 30th of June, 19 entire days after Jack Walton went missing, that notion wouldn't exactly be out of the realm of possibilities. Sophie continues. She makes her way around the farm, expressing confusion and concern about what she just witnessed. Soon after, though, she makes her way to the mailbox, encountering a strange sequence of messages from a Linda Crankin, whose name was oddly scratched out and replaced with Thompson. Unfortunately, most of the narrative on these pages are redacted. However, we can piece together bits of the story through the ones that aren't.
October 30th, 1964. Felix has been acting weird lately. He's been drinking more than usual. I'm very worried about him. I don't know what to do. August 23rd, 1965. I know I haven't talked here as much as I used to. This month has been so crazy. I moved in with Felix last week. He was very happy about it. Yesterday, Jack and Rose had their third child, a little girl. Her name is Molly Walton. Jack and Felix have been pitching up the restaurant idea with a company that's interested in the project. The name Cyberfun Tech. December 26th, 1970. Christmas was nice. They built a doll, a gray rabbit, for Ed and Molly. Molly named it Rocket. Felix drank a lot yesterday. This has been a problem for a while. He's a good person, but he doesn't want to address this. It's getting worse and worse, but he doesn't notice. He feels bad about it, but doesn't try to change. January 3rd, 1973. It's getting worse. He's so submerged with their project that he doesn't realize how much damage he's doing to himself, how much damage he's doing to me. He keeps going places only to drink. Sometimes he even stays at the warehouse for the sole purpose of drinking. He doesn't listen. He never listens. I don't know what to do. May 2nd, 1974. Dear Felix, by the time you're reading this, I shouldn't be home. I know you're confused. I'm confused too. What you said to me last week hurt me a lot, but it opened my eyes. Hopefully, this opens your eyes too. Our relationship isn't healthy. It never was. I'm leaving Brighton this morning. You're in the warehouse with Jack and the others as I'm writing this. By the time you're reading this, I'll already be in Hurricane. I know you were busy today doing Jack a favor. Something related to a school party. I can't remember, but please go there when you have the time. As for me, I'll try to build my own life while I still can. And you should do that too. I love you. Goodbye, Linda.
Here, we gain our first bit of insight into the backstory of Felix Crankin, someone we've had our suspicions about from the very beginning. As it turns out, he struggled with alcoholism, ultimately leading to the separation between him and his now ex-wife, Linda Thompson. On top of drinking, allegedly Felix was overworking himself, causing damage to not only himself, but to those around him. It seemed that, as an act of goodwill, he built a rabbit doll named Rocket for Jack's youngest two kids, Ed and Molly. Keep these names in mind as they'll be important shortly. Moving onward, Sophie eventually makes her way to Buzu the Ringleader's minigame, called Lily's Birthday. The premise of this one involves winning matching minigames against Buzu to test the entertainment for the upcoming party. Sophie obliges, however things don't quite go as planned.
Congratulations! You're very good at this. Right. It's time for the...
The next minigame after this is called Spot the Difference, and is pretty self-explanatory. After a few rounds though, the game glitches, displaying the... Actually, I'll just let you experience it on your own.
Congratulations! You completed my game. Now, time for the prizes. Missing 0714, missing 0714, missing 0714, missing 0714, missing 07.
Missing 0714. It seems to me that the face in that game isn't actually Jack Walton like I initially assumed, since for him, he went missing on the 11th of June, not the 14th of July. With this in mind, if we think back to the end of the Relocate Project video, the names on that list were
Jack, Susan, Charles, Rosemary, Sophie.
So we know that this isn't Jack or Sophie, and we also know that Susan and Rosemary's corpses are stuffed inside other animatronics. The only name remaining is Charles, leaving me to wonder how they're related to BSI or anyone in this entire saga at all. Anyway, back to the farm. Sophie continues. Ominously quiet and littered with missing posters, she explores a bit while expressing concern that she just might know the people within the posters the game's been showing her. A short while later, she approaches Pete's barn before the game glitches, displaying one last minigame for her to complete. That of Shaw the Lamb, the same animatronic we know to represent her mother. The minigame this time is simply hide and seek and initially has Sophie's character finding Shaw.
I need to find a sheep.
After she eventually finds her, we can observe the game switch sides to where Sophie's the one hiding. And from here on, this is where things quickly turn dour.
Am I still beautiful to you? Sophie.
I know you.
Found you.
As we could see, when Shaw approached us, the screen cut to what I'm assuming to be the night that Rosemary went missing, with the text reading, "I know where he is, Rosie. Follow me." Now, initially I'd assumed that this were someone else, like the voice of Bond, since they're referring to her as Rosie. However, thinking back on that scene from the Relocate Project tape,
Sophie, where am I?
perhaps this text could represent the voice of Sophie. After this, we're greeted by another countdown, and when it finishes, we observe the following. It seems to me that that entire section represented the night that Rosemary Walten went missing through the eyes of Sophie. With the bloody Shaw animatronic right up in our face, screaming and pleading for mercy, it really seems like we're experiencing things in first person. This scene is undisputedly traumatic, and witnessing something like this would undoubtedly leave someone scarred for life. With that being said, considering that Sophie's name was uttered by Shaw earlier, that Sophie's actively taking pills that we know suppress her memory, and that in that Lucky You tape, the voice claims safety in pills over and over, it's safe to assume at this point that Sophie must have been there. And so the question remains, did she willingly lure her mother back there, or was she forced to? Jumping forward, we witness a gray bear character emerging from their so-called fountain of memories. Sophie goes forth to ask who they are, to which they respond by drawing the following picture. After this, the game glitches once more and the bear vanishes. A few seconds later though, we're greeted with the picture of a house labeled May 2nd, 1974, and on the doorstep, 2 children. Sophie claims to remember it.
That's my old house.
Hey, hold on. I'm so glad you're here to help me clean the code base. All that's left to do is just...
That phone call is from Jack Walten to Felix Kranken. Jack asks for a simple favor, to take his kids Ed and Molly to their school event since he and Rosemary are caught up in other errands.
Tonight, a school party, and they have no one to pick them up. I need to stay at the workshop to finish the paperwork, and Rosie's taking Sophie to the dentist. We were wondering if we could pick them up for the event and take them home later.
Tonight?
Yeah, if it's possible, of course.
Admittedly, the task is simple. Pick them up at 5 to take them there, and bring them back home at 9. Reluctant, Felix agrees before the call ends. And so, the game leaves us back in the farm area once more. After poking around a bit, Sophie eventually encounters the 2 red children, and upon interacting with them, we gain a bit more context about the night of that favor.
Ed and Molly.
After this brief segment, we begin playing in the school at what appears to be 9:37 p.m. Rocket approaches us and says to follow. After exploring a bit, we eventually glitch through a wall and become those 2 kids who, surprisingly, have not been picked up yet. Soon after, we encounter Rocket and are shown a scene involving the 2 kids expressing that they're ready to leave since the school looks creepy at night. "Where's Uncle Felix?" they claim. And so we set out to find him. Shortly after, the scene cuts to 9:53 p.m. and involves Felix and the 2 kids in the car. They inquire on getting home safely before pressing Felix about drinking before this trip. The speed of the car picks up, with Felix becoming more and more erratic. The children forgive him for his behavior, However, ominously, the text on screen states that it's all your fault before the following takes place.
Thanks, Molly.
Now, I believe this, right here, marks the beginning of the end of the relationship between Jack and Felix. Jack's children were killed, and it was due to Felix's own irresponsibility in getting them home safely. Even more bizarrely, soon after this bad ending sequence plays out, we can observe a scene with Rocket the Rabbit in the woods, with the voice ominously claiming that they didn't go home that night. He buried them here. He was too scared, but they found a way out eventually.
You have 25 new messages. Felix, pick up the phone. Now, I need you to pick up the phone. It's been 3 hours since I told you to get Ed and Molly home. What happened to my children? If anything happened, Felix, you must tell me. You haven't told me in 3 hours. I need to know what's going on. I'm trying to call you all night. What the hell is wrong with you? I've been trying to contact you all night. I've been calling everyone for you. Just what the hell is wrong with you? 3 hours, you didn't call. I asked you to do one simple favor for me. I need to know, where are they? Where did you...
And to cap off this last entry in the Walten Files saga, we're left with a message.
But that's not all, is it? There's still something you forgot to remember. They've been waiting for you.
Before we're greeted with 4 animatronics. Benny, Buzu, Shah, Bon. Considering that this series is very much in progress, this message could be hinting at the future. Is this little girl popping up around Bond's Sophie, or is it someone else that we haven't seen yet? For all we know, this could even be some sort of warning, given that, so far, this game's done nothing but help Sophie remember the past that she's been forced to forget. She's the last alive member of the Walten family, and I'm not entirely sure if remembering and re-experiencing the deaths of her entire family are a good or a bad thing. It looks like we'll have to see. In memory of Edward and Molly Walten. Ed and Molly died Thursday, May 2nd, 1974, in a fatal car accident. They were leaving a party made by their school to celebrate spring. Jack Walten couldn't take his kids to the celebration because of work. A friend of Mr. Walten would take the kids instead. On the way back home, Jack's friend was driving in questionable conditions, thus crashing his car near the road next to the St. Juanas forest. Instantly, both Edward and Molly's lives were taken. You will be remembered, our little angels, our little red children. Now, you might be wondering where this hidden tape came from, and conveniently, the answer's simple. It was left in the Walten Files playlist on the Martin Walls channel, implying that it's canon. The premise of this one appears to be an audio archive of former events surrounding Felix Kranken, with the first segment taking place on April 15th of 1967. In this one, we can hear Felix briefly and enthusiastically discussing Bunny Smiles and how he has a positive outlook for the company. Following this, we get one more from 1972, explaining how his company made a deal with Cyberfun Tech to continue on with the Bonsburgers project. And after this one, we can observe one last audio log from May 2nd of 1974, the same day that Ed and Molly died in that fatal car accident. Within this one, Felix expresses his guilt, contemplating on what to do.
Alright, it's... yeah. messed up. It's been so long since I last used one of these. Last time I used this, I was driving. In the same conditions. I messed up. I have a problem. And this has been a problem for so long that I can't even remember. The first time I got drunk, I don't remember most stuff. That's probably why I carry this.
And that, my friends, encompasses the entirety of the Walten Files. Dark, complex, disturbing. So, in review, this entire series appears to revolve around Jack's eldest daughter, Sophie Walten. She's the core, the one that can maintain this ongoing status quo that Felix Kranken's established, or to burn it all down if she so chooses. She was born into a family of 3, with her mother being Rosemary and her father being the elusive Jack. A few years later, 2 more siblings named Ed and Molly would be born into their family. However, due to events that Felix Kranken had a hand in, they would never, ever experience their coming of age. Felix was a family friend, someone that the Walten family could trust with everything, yet ironically, is also the main antagonist and the one that ended up killing all of them. On May 2nd of 1972, after being asked to do a simple favor by Jack Walten, Felix had become heavily intoxicated at that school party. As we know by now, due to this intoxication, the 3 became involved in a car accident that ended up killing Ed and Molly. Beaten up and unable to bear the weight of his actions, Felix decides to bury them in a forest, the St. Juanas forest, in hopes of hiding his mistakes entirely. As we know though, the children wouldn't rest there eternally, since a few moments later, we observed them merge into that rocket doll, appearing to utilize that as their medium to get their fate across to the viewer. 1 month and 9 days later, on the 11th of June, Jack Walten goes missing. We can observe his missing flyer littered throughout every episode. However, at this point, we're unsure of what exactly happened to him. We have our sneaking suspicion that he could be stuffed into Bon the Rabbit, but as of right now, that's merely a theory. Another month passes, and Rosemary Walten's grieving over her missing husband and 2 children at Bonsburgers. She was likely desperate, weak, and open to anything, any lead she could get on where her family might be. She hears a voice coming from backstage, mentioning that, "I know where he is, Rosie." a voice that we now know was most likely that of her eldest daughter, Sophie. She heads back there, hoping to gather any sort of answer to ease her mind, yet is greeted with the face of death. She becomes dismembered as some unknown figure observes from the sidelines. It appeared, at least to this silhouette, that Bond's actions were going as planned, as programmed, and everything was falling perfectly into place. But that's not to say that these actions didn't go unnoticed, since Bond's builder, Susan Woodings, had realized irregularities in Bond just 19 days prior. It's clear to us that he wasn't programmed to behave this way and likely was altered in some form or fashion. Whether that was by Felix or someone else is to be determined, but there was ostensibly a notable change before Bond's Burgers ever opened. And so, Susan Woodings is killed because of her realization. She knew too much and was silenced before she could ever get the truth out there. Just 2 weeks after her death, we observe yet another, 5 days before that of Rosemary Walten. We're unsure of the exact identity of this person. However, considering the list of names that Ashley discovered, it's safe to assume that his name is Charles. For now, his relation to the story is unclear. However, I'm betting that his job was in the same vein as that of Susan Woodings, either a builder or a programmer of some sort. Perhaps we'll find out more information about him as this series progresses, but right now, that's what we can roll with. July 20th. Bond's Burgers closes after people reported screams that they heard around 2 a.m. Given the fact that Rosemary Walten was killed on July 19th, it's safe to assume that these screams were most likely her. It seems to me that due to the attention that the restaurant was getting, Felix decided to pull the plug on Bond's Burgers, storing every animatronic inside a top-secret facility in the St. Juanas forest. He likely placed it there because that's where Jack's 2 children died and were buried. Either he built it over the spot where he buried them, or placed it nearby so we could check up on it whenever he was working. These are, of course, just theories. However, I think it makes a bit of sense. Anyway, it seems that Felix, from the very beginning, had always planned to reopen Bond's Burgers, moving forward with the past quite literally buried behind him. Most likely, the only reason why he shut everything down and locked it up was to lay low for a bit. To let it all pass. And when people moved on, to bring it right back. 4 years later, and the relocate project is finally in full swing. Facility caretakers are tasked with the most dangerous job out of all of them, reprogramming the robots themselves. Considering the lack of knowledge that came with Brian and Ashley, it's safe to assume that this facility caretaker job probably was a sketchy one. They likely received little to no orientation, no tours, and no heads up on what their supplies were actually intended for. Personally, I think that the extent of their training was to simply watch the numerous BSI tapes. Watch the company introductory tape to learn about Bond's Burgers. Watch the numerous archives within the Relocate project to become acquainted with our new mission, and listen to Shah as she gives you a virtual tour of K9. Because, you know, there's no way in hell that any higher-ups are risking their lives for this. That's what the facility caretakers are for, of course. And so, after all of this is said and done, we're left with one. Sophie Walten. Someone that we know was convinced to take a set of pills to forget that her family had ever existed. And this is where our mystery continues. To me, I really believe that Felix had a hand in suppressing her memories. He just couldn't stomach it. He couldn't kill her. Why? Well, at this point we're unsure, but it's safe to say that he's had numerous chances after the fact, yet didn't. And so, with Sophie, after the rapid succession of major losses in her life, she likely didn't know where to turn. She was lost and was plummeting into an ever-darkening mindset due to the onslaught of tragedies she's had to endure. Felix noticed this, and to shut her up, he likely decided to bring her under his wing since he's Uncle Felix, remember? He gives her a job at Bond's Burgers to keep her busy, pushes her to obtain a prescription that he likely claimed would help, made her watch these so-called internal BSI tapes that were littered with hypnotic vernacular.
Safety and pills, Sophie. safety of kills, Sophie.
And convinced her that, eventually, it would all go away. And it did. It did all go away. To me, that list of names now seems like it was some sort of a hit list. Just one piece in a breadcrumb trail that Felix was trying to bury. He wanted to move on from this entirely. He continued with the Bonsburgers project years into the future, touting himself as the only founder of the company, quite literally cutting any mention of Jack Walten out of ever existing. The thing is, though, is that whoever created these tapes knows something. They want Sophie to remember, and now that she has, at least as of October 16th of 1982, it leaves us to wonder if she'll be next in line to meet her demise at the hands of Felix Kranken's reprogrammed animatronics. Just like that ominous facility caretaker key, Sophie's left as the sole survivor, and sort of a key herself that can open and expose the metaphorical backdoors into Felix Kranken's secrets. Doing this would allow her to finally expose his wrongdoings, ultimately leading to much needed accountability for everything that he did to her family. That is, of course, unless he gets to her first. Loss, betrayal, suppression, curiosity, and death. These are the major cornerstones of the Walten Files tapes, something that I've become absolutely enthralled by in recent months. It's been quite a while since I've seen a series this well constructed, and I'm immensely eager to see how each lingering question becomes answered. Like, how did Bond become violent to begin with? Who's putting Jack's face into these tapes? What actually was the fate of Jack Walten anyway? Where the hell does Anthony fit into all this? And will Felix Kranken ever answer for the murder cover-up of nearly the entire Walten family? As it stands, and considering that there are more episodes planned, it looks like only time will tell. When these videos do come out though, you can bet your ass that I'll be dropping everything to tune in. And when the time is right, you know that I'll be back. And I'll be ready for part 2.
Twilight soon will fade. I'll meet you at the masquerade, while our hearts are swinging to violin singing till dawn. Ladies dressed in jade, hold me tight at the masquerade. If the music halts here, then my heart will waltz here right on. 12 o'clock is chiming on the clock up above. Now if you unmask your heart, I love you, love you. Midnight shadows fade, no one's left at the masquerade. Everything is through, dear, but my love for you, dear, lives on.